Well, hey everyone, we are back and we have just returned from seeing Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
And in case you if you haven't noticed already, Tony's got a PlayStation shirt on.
Yep.
Because this was a PlayStation production. And so, I think before we start getting into anything, I just wanted to bring up some history regarding Gran Turismo. I have not played any one of the games. In fact,
Yeah.
I am not into racing games that much, but I have played racing in video gaming.
Yeah, there are some mini games and other aspects of the video games. I have not Gran Turismo, but I have played a few racing games on the PlayStation 2 in the past a little bit. I know whenever you came over to my house, you've seen a couple of those game, a few of those games on my PlayStation. Whether it's that motorcycle game I had.
The motorcycle one I don't remember too much.
There was also the ATV.
ATV.
There was the ATV one, and I think one of the other one I had a few years later was another. I think it was DT Racing or something like that.
DT Racing. I mean, I may have maybe passed over those and looking over your PS2 collection, but
yeah.
I believe you if they were there.
Yeah, I know there were a couple of those right there. So I have, in terms of racing games, am familiar with those type of games before.
I mean, I have played racing in games like Mario Kart on the DS, and that was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Except for the blue bombs that kept hitting you when you were in first place.
Yep. For me, in terms of Mario Kart, N64, Wii, a lot, and a little bit on the Switch at other places. Mm-hmm. I've got to get it on my own Switch, but I've played it at other people's houses or other places before in terms of the Mario Kart.
There's been some racing games I've played where they'll have car action in some of them, like Rage, for example.
Yep.
Rage is set in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, which looks like Mad Max, and they race their cars in the wasteland, although there was one section which was a non-racing mini-game, but you had to drive through these beams of light.
Yep.
Problem was, this one particular section, the lights spawned at random, and you had no idea where they were going to spawn. That was the hardest one for me.
Another one, I would say Sly Cooper. In the second main area of the game where you have to fight, go and fight the big dog.
Yeah, I remember that. That section was a little challenging.
Yeah, because there was a mini game little thing where you have to race and get in first place.
Yeah, and that section I remember took me a few tries to get it, but it was pretty challenging. I know in Ratchet and Clank Going Commando, you have these speeder bikes in the desert or on one of the game planets. Those are fun.
Yep.
But you got to know the racetrack to really succeed at it.
Yep. And then another one, which was famous back when we went to Lifetime in the kids area, Star Wars Pod Racer.
Yeah, I have that actually on PS4. There's a port they made of that.
Yep. And I also got that on the series too, backwards compatibility.
That's nice. So at least, I think I played one version of it in the arcade. There was an arcade version of Star Wars Pod Racer.
Yeah.
I did not succeed because, it was my first try.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's kind of our little history on racing games a little bit, but mostly mini stuff or stuff that's not actual racing simulators. Because that was the thing about Gran Turismo is it's a racing simulator, and a lot of the things people have said about this film is, well, how do you adapt that into a film? There's no story behind it.
No, but there are some games where it's kind of hard to do, but they try to do it anyways, and it's either been successful or failures in terms of that one. This one is kind of a solid one because it is based off of a true story.
Yes, it is, although this film, it sort of takes place in the modern era to a point. I didn't see anything that indicated previous years.
No, but they did bring up a few photos, especially at the end, in terms of the actual guy who actually did it. Oh.
Yeah, so Gran Turismo, it's not actually in a way, it's not really an adaptation of the games, but it's more so using the games as a background to tell the story of real life racer Jan Mardenborough.
Yep, who used the game of Gran Turismo because he played it a lot, to the point where he kind of I know you mentioned this on the way back here, ascended to using that knowledge in the actual racing, race ground, basically.
Yes, basically anyone who knows the story of Jan Mardenborough, he basically was introduced to Gran Turismo on the PS1. And from there, with the 2, the 3, and onward, he played the rest of the series. And it's basically, along with his interest in cars, that made him wanting to be a real race car driver, which is what this entire film is based off of.
Yep.
Now, I don't know how accurate this is to his entire biography. I'm pretty sure there are details that will either be changed or rewritten, so to speak, but I'm not completely well versed in his biography.
And also maybe some places that were either over-exaggerated or whatever the case may be. But it is you could say, your stereotypical sports movie, since it is a racing type, movie.
It does follow the sports movie formula, but I would say, unlike some sport films which can get pretty cheesy, this one did not feel cheesy at all, and I did like the way its story was told for the most part.
Yeah, because you have not only the kid that, grew up playing these things and trying to prove the dollars wrong, like his dad, who very much doubted him at first, and then you also have the chief engineer, who also was a former racer himself, and he got sick and tired of this one group, basically the yellow driver.
Yep.
You can basically call him like the Bumblebee driver or something like that, because it was like gold and black, basically.
I think we should call him Gold Leader. That would be a better name for him.
I don't know if Gold Leader would be the thing. Gold 1 or something like that.
Gold 1 or something, whatever we're going to call it. I just wouldn't call it Bumblebee, because Bumblebee was like pure yellow. This wasn't pure yellow.
Yeah. But either way, though, he is kind of like your stereotypical sore loser attitude, sort of play. He is cocky, but when he's on the losing end, he does show he easily is to frustrations.
Yeah, and I mean, they didn't go into that too much, but you do see that a little bit in his character.
Yeah.
And so I think I do want to ask, what were your thoughts on Gran Turismo?
The movie itself, it is definitely a solid film, I would say, about Gran Turismo. It does follow the sports formula a lot. It does, because it does deviate from a little bit, or kind of like is a little bit free with his storytelling, because it is based off of the true stories. So of course they either exaggerate, under exaggerate, or I shouldn't say under, but over exaggerate on a few things, or maybe make up some things. But that is to the, if you read up on his autobiography. But either way, I thought this was a solid racing film.
I would say that I'm on the same page too. This was pretty good and serviceable for what it was.
Yeah.
And I'd say it was really well made. I'll give it that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
This was actually a really well shot film. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there was maybe a little shakiness, but not too much to where I was not disorientated, and that's actually what contributed to these racing scenes, which I think we should get into. But I think I'm gonna give a compliment to this film, actually. Unlike most video game films, which have this kind of cheap, stylish look to it, this one actually felt like a real movie.
Yeah.
Which was nice, because while I haven't seen too many video game movies, the ones I have seen, or at least seen reviews of, they have this like stylish, fake feeling to it, and you can't take it seriously.
Yeah.
But in this case, that's not the case here. This was actually shot like a real movie, and I like that.
You also have a few scenes where you bring in the video game. They bring in the video game elements, like the race hint, basically, where you see the dotted lines of like, here's what your opponent car is doing. Here's the suggested route.
Yep, and then there's these little icons above the cars to indicate his position.
Yep. Which
actually did help, because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't know what place he was in unless someone announced it over the speaker.
Or you see like the big hear what lap you're on and position, basically.
Yeah, they actually freeze frame to let you know which lap it is, what position it is.
Yeah, or even like freeze frame for like a split second to say, at the end of the race, just be like, hey, this person was this spot.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, I had a good time watching this, and I would say, because this film is significant, not because it's a video game adaptation, but because this is the return of Neill Blomkamp to mainstream movie making. And I say that because I kind of want to talk about the images directors create for themselves before we go into sort of spoiler territory. So for those who are familiar with him, Neill Blomkamp, back in 2009, he made it big with District 9, which was a film about these aliens that come down and they land in Johannesburg, South Africa, but they're refugees from another world. And so when the humans interact with these aliens, we segregate the aliens from the humans, because that's kind of what would happen if aliens came to Earth and they were looking to conquer or invade. We would separate them from the rest of humanity.
Well, I don't know about that in terms of separating them, but if they were coming in here to live, then you can see the whole, like, okay, it's, segregation happening. If they were to conquer or invade, that's when the military gets involved. But
exactly, and with District 9, Neill Blomkamp had created this image for himself where he makes these gritty, photorealistic sci-fi films that have some social commentary behind them. And with District 9, the commentary was that it was an allegory for the apartheid era, which was a very, very racially charged era in South Africa. And so his subsequent films, Elysium and Chappie, he wasn't quite able to hit the heights of District 9. Because like Elysium was basically, the commentary that was the gap between the rich and the poor. The rich are in this ring in space and they're living this luxurious life while the rest of us live on this over-polluted and battered Earth. And then Chappie was, I don't think there was too much social commentary in that. I'd have to watch it again. Like the idea of, what if we had a robot that could think, and what could happen if that was the case? Only Chappie was the film that sort of made people realize, I don't think Neill Blomkamp's as good as he was with District 9. And a lot of people were comparing Neill Blomkamp's rise and fall to that of M. Night Shyamalan. What I'm going to explain is, with M. Night Shyamalan, when he released The Sixth Sense in 1999, everybody was like, this is the next big thing. He's going to be this really awesome filmmaker. But with subsequent releases, like, he got progressively kind of worse and worse with each release until he hit rock bottom with the Last Airbender film.
Oh, yeah. Because he was more known for, like, these ridiculous plot twists, basically.
Yeah, he was doing, like, these twist endings in all his movies, and they kept getting, like, worse and worse as they went along.
Yeah. Or almost, like, either stupidly obvious or, like, or just, like, out of left field, and it's like, doesn't make sense.
Exactly. And M. Night Shyamalan, he's kind of entered this territory now where he's very hit and miss. But with Blomkamp, after Chappie, like, he sort of disappeared for a while. Like, at one point, he was going to make an Alien film, which would have ignored Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection as if they never happened. And I was actually on board with that, because 3 and Resurrection are probably the two installments that are not the greatest. And the concept art, which I did show you, looked really good, and I would have definitely loved to have seen it. But ultimately, it was never made because the studio was like, well, Ridley Scott's got to make Alien Covenant. Let's have him make that first. Ultimately, Neill Blomkamp's Alien film was never made, even though James Cameron was working to get it back up and running, and Sigourney Weaver was on board with it, but yeah. And then I know Neill Blomkamp was going to do a RoboCop film that would have ignored RoboCop 2 and 3 as if they never happened. He said this sequel would have been like what Paul Verhoeven had done with the original. Would have liked to have seen it, but ultimately it never got made. And then he sort of made these like short sci-fi films for his studio, Oats Studio, which you can view those on Netflix or on YouTube. Different viewing options, and they were, kind of hit and miss, but it kind of showed, okay, maybe he's still got a little bit of promise. But then he made this like horror film called Demonic, which not a lot of people saw. It was kind of small scale and shot in secret during the pandemic. But when it was released to streaming, people were like, oh, this is not very good. It was slammed by both the critics and the audience. So now Blomkamp, he's back with this film, and it's like, he was once considered like the next big thing in sci-fi, and so this movie completely changes his image. Because it's like, now Gareth Edwards is the one who's going to be the next big thing in sci-fi, because we had a trailer for The Creator, which we've been seeing a lot of. And I think it was a slightly different trailer with the footage rearranged. So it's like, Gareth Edwards, now you're the next big thing in sci-fi when Blomkamp was going to be the next big thing, so, oh boy.
And there were some other trailers that came out too. Well, there was this one commercial that you never, you said you didn't see. until we saw in the theater, which was the McDonald's commercial.
Yeah, with like the international, and you see these different countries, and they're like serving it.
Yep, and movies or shows, anime. Then they got to the last scene with Loki.
Sneak
season
peek
2.
of season 2, and we see Sylvia working in a McDonald's.
Yep, and Loki's ordering something from McDonald's.
Maybe there's a Kang variant that's the manager of that store, which would be really funny.
It would be, yeah.
But also strange. So anyway, and so I think now at this point we can talk about sort of the story of Gran Turismo.
Yeah.
And so it kind of starts out with, like, this is a PlayStation production, so it's going to start out with this new studio that PlayStation's doing. The only other film that I think they've done so far is the Uncharted film, which I did not see. But I'd probably have to play the games first before I see that.
Now, you saw the Uncharted. Did you see the Uncharted film?
I did not see the Uncharted film.
Okay, then, because I was about to ask you about this one because right before the movie started, very similarly how Nintendo did it with the Super Mario film, we saw Sony presented the PlayStation, intro.
And other IPs, like you see The Last of Us, you see God of War, I saw Sackboy from Little Big Planet.
Ratchet & Clank, I saw them.
Which was nice.
Yep.
And then there were maybe a few others, but it was moving so quick I didn't catch all of them.
Yep. But you saw a lot of the iconic PlayStation exclusive games or characters on the introduction and PlayStation. Because this is a PlayStation production, as they will show throughout the film and actually advertise throughout the film.
Yeah, and I mean, it would be kind of interesting to see what other PlayStation properties get adapted.
Yeah.
But then the movie sort of starts like introducing you to what Gran Turismo is. It was basically made by, I can't remember the developer's name, but it was kind of hard to pronounce.
But it was a Sony exclusive gaming thing and they were trying to, the advertisement was basically a realistic, racing scenario type game.
Yeah, and we see in this like montage, they have all the cars, they scan, they do all this attention to detail. And actually, the way this was shot, it almost was done in like an advertisement manner.
Yeah, to start out the film, because it was supposed to be like, we do all these, making sure that we get the, the race car, or the race tracks right, the cars right, and everything else as, as good as it can be. Which leads to our main protagonist, who got himself a nice, wheels.
Yeah, but before we get to that, as soon as we see, based on a true story, I heard this sound effect, and it took me a little while to realize what it was. It was the startup or one of the noises that the PlayStation 5 makes.
Oh yeah, the vroom.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like, was that PS4 or PS5? And then it hit me, it's PS5.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, that's a little cute.
Yeah, because it kind of is like you're entering into the game, basically, or you're loading into the game.
Mm-hmm. And so we're introduced to Jan Mardenborough, who lives in Wales, UK, I believe it was.
I believe so. He was in the London, Wales, yeah. Wales and part of the Great Britain, basically.
Yeah, it's in England, so.
Yep.
And they let you know with every country, like you see the flag of the different countries they're in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Whether that be in Germany,
or France, or the United Arab Emirates, or Japan,
or Spain.
Yeah, that too.
They do travel. They do travel a lot in the game. Well, not in the game, but in the movie, they do travel.
Which is actually kind of something that happens in a lot of sports films. There's a lot of traveling to different places.
True, especially when it comes to racing. You're traveling to different countries to race in these, like really nice tracks.
Oh yes. And so we're introduced to our main character, Jan Mardenborough, and basically they establish that he is a lifelong Gran Turismo player.
Yep.
And we see him with his set of wheels, which I remember when I worked at Best Buy, we used to sell controllers like that in our PlayStation section.
Yep, or near the gaming section. Yeah, but I think there's like maybe the wheels still there, or like new, like nice wheels still there, stuff like that.
Last time I went, I don't remember seeing any of that, so maybe they're filtering it out. I haven't kept up to date on that.
Yeah.
But I do see that he's got the headset and he's communicating with all the other players online.
Yeah.
Now, I never invested money in a headset, so I can't relate to this. And also, I mean, I'm not going to interact with trash talkers online, because trust me, there are some trash talkers online when you go on multiplayer.
It's gaming. You're going to experience that one way or the other.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't really experience that a whole lot. I think I would have found them more on like maybe the COD servers.
Yeah, but I mean, when it comes to like Gran Turismo, it is still a sporting type game. So in terms of sports game, you're going to still experience trash talking because it is first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and whatnot.
Oh, I'm pretty sure of it, but I mean, it's like... Anyway. So, anyway, he gets out the headset, and we see him talking to his friends, and he's playing the game. And this was a small little nitpick here, but he's playing it on the PS5. When it's known, for people who have read up on his autobiography, he started out on the PlayStation 1, and then graduated to the 2 and the 3, and the other systems. And we see a stack of like other Gran Turismos on PS2 and PS3. Yeah. Small little nitpick here. I probably would have wanted to have seen the 2 and the 3 show up.
Maybe, but we got to the point to where it's like he's in his older years, basically. So, in this sort of scenario where we picked up was him. Sounds like he dropped out of college or dropped out of university because he didn't really like it. You know, then other people thought he could get into like sports or something like that, like soccer or whatever the case may be. He didn't like it, so he was more onto the racing sort of thing.
Yeah, actually, they don't say it's soccer because in Britain it's football.
Yeah, football. Yeah.
But yeah, you see his family. His dad comes in. He's like, "Hey, you want to come outside with us? Have a little football match?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I'm good. I just want to keep racing." And he's like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And we see the brother's the one that ends up being the big football player, but they don't go into that too much.
No, they don't. Not really.
And actually, this dinner scene where they're talking about like what Yan wants to do with his life, and they're sort of like they're nervous because you got these dreams, but they're not very realistic. You got to sort of ground yourself.
Yeah, but he feels like he can reach that. He's just waiting for that opportunity, even though the door at that point of time was not open, basically. All the doors were shut, basically. Yes,
and this scene actually reminded me of a very famous scene in one of the biggest films we've ever seen in our lives. The dinner scene reminded me of the scene in A New Hope when Luke and Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru, they're talking, and then Uncle Owen's basically telling him, "I need you for the harvest," and then Luke doesn't really want to be a part of the harvest. He wants to go into the galaxy and be with the Rebel Alliance.
Yep.
Fight against the Empire. It reminded me heavily of that.
Yep. Okay, that's interesting, yeah.
And that's not the only other Star Wars comparison I want to make here, because there was one more I kind of picked up on.
Yeah. But you also got the other scene to where the guy, from Nismo. Or
Nissan?
Nissan, yeah.
His name was Danny Morrow, I believe.
Danny, yeah. He went to, the people that make Gran Turismo and was like, "Hey, I have this idea of this, or kind of like this crazy idea that could work, and that is taking the top racers in Gran Turismo and getting them all to academy to train to be a real race car driver."
And of course, the executives are like, "But how are you sure this idea is going to work?"
Well, it's the first thing they want to make sure is, they approved of it, but they're like, you gotta find the right guy and make sure it is safe.
Yeah, they say like he needs a chief engineer. You gotta find someone who really knows the cars very well and make sure it's safe, because we don't want people dying out on the track.
Because they will be liable for that too. Which will come back later on to haunt, basically.
And I do kind of want to talk about this Danny character a bit, but he was played by Orlando Bloom, which was actually, it was nice to see him again, because
it was.
Most of us know him as Legolas from Lord of the Rings or Will Turner from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yep.
But it's like, those are his two big roles, and yeah, he was in some other stuff, but I don't think a lot of people know about the other stuff he was in.
Yeah, I do remember heavily in the Pirates of the Caribbean a lot as William Turner. And then, yes, you got Legolas in Lord of the Rings.
I mean, yeah, he was a big thing during the 2000s, and then after Lord of the Rings and Pirates and Hobbit ended, it was like, where does he go from there?
Yeah, I know he's done some other films, but those were like his two biggest icons, basically.
Yep. So it was nice to see him again in a non-major franchise that was not fantasy-based.
Yep.
And he was actually pretty good in this. I mean, he was not. He did really good. Like, not a single instance of a bad performance to be found here.
And speaking of another like familiar actor that maybe recognized to people, the chief engineer himself, who was also the officer in Stranger Things.
And he was also the Red Guardian in Black Widow, and he'll come back for Thunderbolts. I guarantee that.
Yep.
And he was also Santa Claus in Violent Night.
Oh, yep, that's right.
Yeah.
But he is the chief engineer in this film, which he was originally on the Gold team until Gold 1 was kind of like talking back at him, saying that you were you're an engineer. If I want to, if I want driving advice, I'll go to my leader, not a guy who failed,
Yeah, and actually, the chief engineer guy, I actually liked the portrayal of this character. His name was Jack Slater, I believe.
Yeah, Jack, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I did like the portrayal of this character because he's he basically says to these characters, okay, you may know the game very well, but I'm going to tell you right now, this is real life. This is no video game, kids.
Well, yeah, because it's like, there is a difference between you either driving or flying in a video game, like aircraft simulators, stuff like that, versus you getting on a suit, getting on a helmet, and actually driving or flying something. Because I can, because he told them, like, there's a difference between you just sitting there, then, you're racing, and then you can hit the restart or the backwards, versus that same instance, you can't pause. You cannot do that. You will go flying.
Exactly. He says that in this kind of game, or this kind of sports, there's a lot of split-second decisions you have to make. It's the difference between life and death.
Yep.
You got to be wise about this because you're moving fast and you got to think really quick.
Yep.
And it's nice that the film emphasizes how dangerous this type of racing is because there's a lot of dangerous situations. Well, there's maybe 3 dangerous situations or a little more that go down in this.
Yeah,
which we'll get into, but
yep. But in actual real life, dude, it is a thing though where a lot of these race car drivers can go flying if something that split second goes wrong.
Yep, and they even emphasize too that a small percentage of people can actually be successful at racing. There's a line of dialogue where they say a small percentage are successful at this.
Yeah, because it is you got a lot of racers, but there's only like 3 spots, basically, the top 3.
Mm-hmm. And then they have this thing on the track where they narrow down the top 5, which again, like most sports films, they're narrowing down these best people who can advance to the semifinals or the finals, and then they seriously consider them, which is nice.
Yeah, but before the whole the camp thing too as well, because our main protagonist got an invite to do a kind of trials, basically.
Yeah, he's in this video arcade bar.
Yep.
Which is basically made up of Gran Turismo machines. Although it would have been nice if they had more than Gran Turismo machines. But I guess this is kind of one of those higher tech arcade bars.
Probably, or a kind of like a club or something like that, a higher tech club, where it's just Gran Turismo and you're playing it. You're playing against other people, you're practicing, doing all this sort of stuff.
And I'll bet it's really expensive to get into that because most arcade bars I've been to, they're not that high-tech fancy.
Yeah, I know. But he was able to get in there just in time. He raced and he won. So he passed the trials, which led him to the camp against 9 other people who also succeeded as well. And that's when our chief, Jack, gave him the camp, basically.
But actually, before this, there's a couple of moments I need to mention before we continue on. But there's a scene where he has to help his friends escape the police.
Oh yeah, this was the because they were going out drinking at a construction site or something like that. Where it's it's illegal to even just go in there in the first place. So you got cops there, so they escaped.
Yeah, they put out the fire with the beer. They're like, "Oh crap, the cops are coming! We gotta put this out! Put it out!"
Yep. So then cops didn't saw that moment then, but what the cops did do was pull over 2 cars, which again, after the guys were kind of banging into each other a little bit, trying to hand each other beer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, our main protagonist, even though he did something wrong, but at the same time, he allowed that to be wrong because, again, cop car can only pull over one car.
But they would check the other car, and if they had found that those boys were drinking, although Yan was the sober one.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much at that point, because if he's the sober driver, the other two wouldn't be in trouble per se because they were drinking and they weren't driving. So it's not much of that. I think he would have got more of the reckless driving a little bit just because you're banging with another car.
Yeah. Although maybe the cop would have taken it a step too far and abused his power, but I don't know how police work in the UK, so.
That is true, because this is UK rule compared to, the US. So it would have been different. Although at the same time, again, I'm thinking like, in terms of the things, like cops can only pull over one car, not really two. So I'm thinking like, you could have just gone, because he was behind the other car. You could have gone and, cop probably wouldn't have been like, oh, I missed one, but I got the one.
He could have done that, but Yan basically wants the thrill of the ride, and so he's like, I'm not missing my race tomorrow. And so he uses his skills, and they like drive out of there and evade the cops.
Well, yeah, no, but he did to his eyes, he would have done the right thing in terms of like getting pulled over and stuff like that. But yeah, like you said, he's not missing the race, he's not doing all this sort of stuff. So he raced out of there, and the cops lost him. And they which also would have gotten into a lot of trouble, which we didn't see, really. We didn't see that part.
Yeah, like he gets back home, and then the dad's outside waiting for them, and he notices like one of the side windows is broken, because when they collided, the side window broke off. And of course, we don't see the scene where he gives his son a talk.
No, but we saw the scene. It was like but the son was expecting that, though. He was expecting that talk, or the reason why they're on the rail tracks and stuff like that. But it was like, no, that's not why I brought you out here. And it was more of, he still didn't believe in that racing dream, basically.
Yeah, he brought him out to his railroad job, and he's like, well, you see, I basically was going for football, but then I realized I'm shooting too high to the stars, so I grounded myself, and I ended up working for this railroad company.
Yeah. Well, he tried to, he didn't work out, and because of that, that's how he ended up in the railroad. So that's why he told the son, you got options. Either go back to, the university to get a degree, or start working right now for the railroad company.
Which, again, that feels familiar to, like, other stuff or other stories you've heard of.
Yeah.
But what I like about the main character is, despite all these, like, little things of go back to school, he never really gives up on his dream. And he never becomes this, like, tortured artist archetype, if that makes any sense.
No, but he used that, he's like, nope. And then he kind of, like, walked out. But because of that, luckily for him, because he still had that invitation, went back as quick as he could, raced, and won. So that means he was on his way to the camp.
Yeah, and they have this, like, ticking clock where he's got to be there in, like, 10 minutes.
Well, yeah, the ticking clock of being there 10 minutes to get to the trial. Then after the trial, and he won it, then we go back to the house where the dad was like, look, it's one thing to, you actually made it this far, but now this is this different level. This is dangerous level, like racing-wise.
Yeah, and they're basically like, this is a very dangerous sport, and I mean, you could get hurt or possibly killed in this.
Yeah, because it's one thing to where, let's say if he was trying out for the football, and he made it, basically. That's one thing, which that would have been like, it's a little bit dangerous, but it's, but it's within our family, he would have been fine. This is like, you're going like 300 miles per hour, racing.
Or you could probably, or it would have been nice if they said you're going Mach 5 or Mach 6.
Yeah, Mach 5, Mach says you're flying. And Jack even said it too, like, you're going double the Mach speed of that of the astronauts, taking off.
Yeah, I mean, if he had gone into football, I mean, UK football, which is basically the soccer, it's very tame compared to American football. American football can get pretty dangerous.
Well, Americanized football, which is, the quarterback and stuff like that, compared to the UK, or the global football, yeah, which is soccer in the U.S.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is in American football, if you know how the guys are, like, facing each other and then they, like, gotta ram into each other, And that's where all those concussions can come from.
Yeah, which they have been getting better. They did try out this little padding thing on the helmet to reduce concussions, which apparently in camp-wise, it was successful. There's it went up by percentage of reduced concussions.
Oh, that's nice.
Or reduce head stuff.
That's nice that they're doing that. And then one more thing I wanted to mention about the 10-minute counter. There's a couple comparisons I need to make to Whiplash in this. Like, you ever seen Whiplash, or do you know about it?
I don't think I'm familiar with Whiplash.
That's where Miles Teller is the drummer, and then J.K. Simmons is basically yelling at him, pushing him to do better. There's these ticking clock elements in Whiplash where he has to get there in 5 minutes to the stage to perform on the drums, but it's a little challenging for him.
Yep.
Where in this case, with this film, yes, he's got the counter, but he gets there on time.
Yeah.
And no challenges come his way.
Yep.
And eventually when he does try out the simulation, which the graphics on that simulation look pretty good.
Yep.
I don't know if Gran Turismo 7 looks like this or not, but maybe it does.
Probably, I would imagine so. In these type of game engines nowadays.
Oh yeah. So anyway, he plays the simulation and he beats everybody, and that's when they're like, "We want to get you into GT Academy."
Yep.
Because you're the top 10 of all the racers in the world, racing simulator guys in the world.
Which again, the dad was like, "This is dangerous. This is now a completely different ballpark now."
Yep. But that doesn't derail him from pursuing his dream, which is nice. And then, so the other thing I kind of want to mention too with this film is there's these little hints of doubt that these people are gamers, but we're not sure if they'll translate well to racers. They kind of touch on that a little bit in some of the scenes.
Because it is similar to can you translate stuff, what you do in the game, into IRL, basically.
Yeah, and I think real life comparison I can make here is that the military, they will use first person shooters on people in the military to see how good they are with firearms, in a sense.
Yeah. Or I can imagine, because I've seen, I guess there have been clips or something like that of actual pilots are going through gaming simulations before flying on an actual airplane, to see, hey, can you, get the comms right? Can you get your, engine, check your engines, your ammunitions, making sure you got everything good to go. You know where things are.
Oh, that's nice. I know there's a few flying simulator exhibitions I've seen in places.
Yeah.
Where you could basically try out to see if you're a good pilot or not.
Yeah.
I always wanted to try one of those, but I never really came around to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, they narrowed down people of different countries, and they're interviewing them and talking with them about what's it like to be here, what's it like to be on the track.
Yep.
And this is actually a comparison I can make with District 9 in a sense. In District 9, basically, the movie, or at least the first half of it, they were interviewing people about what's it like to have these aliens come down, and what's it like being among them. And they had this found footage take on it. Then the real movie started to kick in, which is actually what happens here too.
Yeah, because this is became the more of the academy of trying to make sure, or of can you actually compete with the other racers, which and then you start seeing the dwindling down, the elimination, this person's out, this person's out, this person's out, this person's out.
And it's all because they make an accident or something, or they screw up on the track and their skills are not up to par with what they're looking for.
Or their physical body conditions is not up to par as well. Because you saw a couple of moments where either the guy puked and he got eliminated, or the guy was exhausted and it's nope, you're out.
And that's the other good thing too, is that this is a physically demanding thing, and it will take a toll on you.
Yep.
And it's nice that the chief engineer was like, "You just vomited on my lawn."
Yeah. Well, it probably wasn't, but it was a little bit of the joke of you just vomit on my lawn. What the heck, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, never disrespect a good lawn, people. Never do that.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, they systematically are taken out of the competition. And then it looks like at one point Jan Mardenberg's not going to make it because he was 6.
Yeah, he was 6, and he had a couple of what would have been grave mistakes. Or the one that would have been a grave mistake, which was but I guess he kind of caught himself a little bit about it too, where he was trying to make a turn, but the brakes weren't working properly. Nope, which he kind of figured because if it was working properly, you would have probably around good in timing, or it would have slowed down and you would have been like this, or slowed down and done that, compared to gliding basically.
Yeah, and I mean, I know what that's like in racing games. Like, I remember in Rage, there were moments where I had to do stuff like that, but the car just felt really heavy.
Yeah.
And it was like, I have to make this split-second decision so I can stay ahead of everybody else.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too much like that based off of my experience, but yeah, he was having trouble with the brakes, and it was like, they're not working properly, and then they disqualify him at first. But then he confronts the chief engineer and is like, well, the brakes weren't working properly. That's why I wasn't doing so good. And at first, he doesn't believe him until one of the test drivers is like, the kid was right. The brakes weren't working properly.
Yeah, because he did like a little test, drive, and it's like, kid was spot on. It was glazed, and it's like, kid, how the heck do you know?
Well, he's been playing the game for years. He knows his stuff.
Well, not only that, but he specified, like, he actually goes through, which we saw in the beginning too as well, he goes through a lot of the mechanical parts, because you know how, like, you customize your vehicle and stuff like that. He was telling about he took the time to actually customize vehicles, basically.
Yeah, and we see a little bit of that in the beginning when he's playing the game, and like this 3D model of all the specs comes out of the TV.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, that doesn't work unless you have 3D glasses.
Yeah. But again, like, he is able to, like, again, he takes some time in customization, which helps him a little bit in terms of saying, hey, I think my car wasn't, the brake wasn't working properly because it was glazed, it's not working, blah, blah, blah.
I'm pretty sure there's players of Need for Speed that can relate to this, because I'm pretty sure Need for Speed players, they spent more time customizing their cars than actually playing the game.
Yeah. But because of that catch, it helped them go over the top a little bit and say, okay, you noticed something that was wrong with the vehicle. That helped you, compared to the other drivers.
And it's that knowledge that allowed him to advance, and they're like, okay, you're back in the competition.
Yep. And now you're in the final race. In which the final race happened, and then of course they were racing, and then the early on antagonist, which became the protagonist later, or another protagonist, or like a helpful assistant or ally, you could say. They were kind of like facing each other, and then they sort of, you could say, split, almost tie, although our main protagonist won, but it was like a millisecond decision.
Yeah, that was like with the split-second decisions. And I sort of forget who the other guy was, because I know we had the main antagonist. The other guy I can only remember based on his appearance, but I don't think I caught his name.
No, but he was like, he was like early on, kind of like the trial run antagonist, but he became an ally later, or a friend later. Yeah. Just because he was part of that group of training, and he was one of the top 3 guys in that whole thing. It was him and another guy that came along at the end. But we'll get to those guys in a little bit. But it was between main protagonist and the other guy with a split second. Then Danny was like, the other guy, he's good with the media. But Jack probably told him this. You brought me here to figure out which one was the best racer. Not who could please, the media folks.
Exactly, which is why your best racers, I mean, they may not be great with the media, because we see that Jan, he's a little nervous in interviews from time to time.
Yes, he is definitely nervous, or can have not the greatest, like public speaking, basically. But there's not a lot of people who are great public speakers, though. We've seen that in multitude of sports.
I mean, yeah, public speaking is a very difficult skill to have from time to time. I should know.
Yeah.
I took a public speaking course, and I mean, I got a little nervous, but that's a completely different story.
Yeah. So, I bet that conversation went in, and he said, that kid wins. And it was right. The kid won. It was by a split second.
Mm-hmm.
And they told him, yep, you won. By a split second.
Yep. And so then they proceed him into the actual races, where I do kind of want to talk about the racing for a bit.
Yep.
The racing was actually really well done in this.
Yep.
I don't know if it's groundbreaking. It probably is not, because it may be similar to stuff that you've seen in other racing films.
Yeah.
But what I do like is that for these racing scenes, they look realistic. Like they're really well shot.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of segments where it looks like they use drones on set to do the actual filming.
Yep.
Which made these really nice, like, follow the cars shots.
Or kind of like the, like, area view of, like, the cars moving, like, left to right, weaving and stuff like that. And then once we get to the actual races, that's where we get reintroduced to our main antagonist, and then our second one.
And the main antagonist is the gold one, and then
and then you have colorful stripes, or white with color stripes, basically, kind of like on the side right here.
Oh yeah, I think I caught that person, but the only two recognizable drivers for me were Yan and the golden driver.
Yeah, so Yan, gold one, and then I'll just nickname this guy Stripes One, because even though it's white but with colorful stripes, I'm just gonna say Stripes One in this regard. He was the other bully, basically.
Yeah.
Gold One was like the real bully, but then you have the Stripes One, and he was like the slightly, like, he was a little bit of a bully himself, but he wasn't like egregious.
Yeah, and I mean, the bully characters don't have a lot of characterization of them. Like, they're very stock characters.
Yeah.
Outside of maybe basic traits, there's nothing else about them.
No. Although they tried to do a little bit more with Gold One than the other guy. So they became like a stock character. And then the love interest girl came back again.
Who is the obvious love interest. Like, there's not much to her character except for that.
It was the obvious love interest, and they met at the construction site.
Yeah, and then they sort of DM'd each other over Instagram, I believe it was.
I think so. It was like Instagram or, either that or, I think it was Instagram. I was about to say Snapchat, but...
It's not Snapchat. It looked like Instagram.
Yeah, it was Instagram. So...
But before we get into that, I got to sort of address something quick. We'll be right back, folks.
So then, actually before that though, because you had the racing montage basically, which you call it the Rocky montage a little bit.
Back up a bit before we get to that, because when he starts out racing, like, he gets in 27th place.
Even though he was in 4th, but the reason why he got in 27th was because Gold One kind of like got him. Basically, it was, I think it's kind of like
got him on the tail section or on the back end.
Which I know from playing one of the racing game a little bit. I've done this a few times and just kind of like just playing around a little bit, testing it out. If you do hit somebody on the back there, it can cause like actual, like, and probably it's happened in real life too. And we've tried this out. You probably all try this out in like any other games, whether it's Halo or stuff like that, where you hit another car behind you like that, the person in front is going to rail away.
And that's actually happened to me when I played Rage. Like, I would hit other drivers using rockets from the back end, and then the cars would, like, go flying.
Yeah.
Or there'd be severe damage, or they would swiver,
Well, that's hitting it with the rocket versus you ramming it, though. Because if you ram it, then... But there's also a potential chance of you yourself going off the rails, too, a little bit. More likely, it's the front guy, for sure, because you're disrupting the balance and, that sort of speak. And it's like... woof, because then once you let go, now you got this guy kind of like, flying and just like, woof. But you also have the risk too of, if anything happens to you, or if anything happens to your car going something else, you have a good chance of flying yourself.
Exactly, and I mean, that's another thing is when they emphasize how dangerous it is, we see like the impact of all these fast-moving vehicles and the damage they can do to each other.
Yeah, which kind of like hinted that a little bit at first after that with the 27th place.
Yeah, and I mean, he was doing really good. I will not deny that. But when he got to 27th, I mean, man, that's a big low right there.
That was a big low. But then it's like, all right, but he showed some sign of progress and stuff like that, which then became the montage.
Well, before we get to the montage, one more thing. There's this guy, I forget his name. Was it the Stripes guy or something? Basically, he's like to Yan Marlboro, 27th place? You're a noob.
That's his mechanic, or one of the mechanic guys.
Or one of the mechanics, yeah. But he was like to Yan Marlboro, you're a noob. And I'm like, okay, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, gaming reference right there. But anyways, though, Then we get to the, Jack saying, "It's okay, we just got work on a few things, but you'll get better." And he did get better.
Since you brought that up, that's another thing. I think I don't know if I mentioned this already, but with the chief engineer, I like how he's not shouting or yelling at Yan. He's actually encouraging him to get better and progress, which is something we see in the montage. Because in Whiplash, basically, this is another comparison I didn't make to Whiplash, but in Whiplash, J.K. Simmons, he's yelling and being psychotic and abusive to Miles Teller, which is his way of telling the drummer, "You got to get better." But unfortunately, this breaks Miles Teller's character in the film. But in this case, this is not really a more psychotic, mad shouting match. It's they're basically encouraging him, okay, you got to sort of work on this a bit, and you'll get there. Yeah. Which was some nice positive portrayal. I liked that.
Yep, and he did get better. He went from 27th to 23rd, and 23rd to 18th or 17th.
He made it to 8th place, I think,
and
or close
18th
to 7th.
8th, and then he jumped to 18th to 8th. He made that big leap, and then at some point he was able to get to 4th, and that 4th place helped him get the license.
They use FIA license.
Yeah, FIA.
They talked to him about that on a private jet.
Yeah, which the FIA, which basically is a license or kind of a guarantee, kind of like a grant of right, saying, all right, you've proven yourself basically to actually race.
Yep. And actually, during the montage, I called it the Rocky montage because we see him running, we see him exercising, and it's all set to actually Search and Destroy by Iggy and the Stooges. There were actually some really good rock songs in this, I won't lie.
Yeah, which right around the license time too, he did the one thing too because he was between the two bullies. He hit the brakes, and the two bullies kind of got off guard, and the gold one made a fatal crash.
Yep.
But he was to be okay per se, and then the other guy, the Stripes guy was I think he was all right, or he was all right himself, and then
actually the fatal crash that happened, that was actually really impressive to watch. It looked extremely photorealistic.
Yeah.
I mean, this is again where Neill Blomkamp, he's showing his technical skill, where he makes everything look as realistic as it gets. I mean, the whole time I was watching that crash, I was like, this does not look fake. This actually looks like it actually happened.
Yeah. And you also got where our main protagonist, all of a sudden one of the wheels or something, they hit his car, and it's oof.
Yeah, and it damaged the front window, and I'm like, oh, that's not good.
Yeah. So then he parked, they, got him up better a little bit. Then it was him against the Stripes, and then he, beat out, got him to 4th place, and Stripes guys got him 5th. But either way, that qualified him, our main protagonist.
Qualified him for the license, and this increases his confidence, and he's doing pretty good. And
yep, although he got pissed off right away with Gold 1, with the fatal crash, you could have killed us both.
Yeah, and the gold driver kind of brushes it off or gets confrontational.
Yeah.
I wasn't quite sure.
He's basically was that's how it works, basically. That's how this thing goes. And you could have killed us both. And it's calm down. But also get excited too because you got your license.
Yeah, and there's kind of a brief fight between Yan and the gold driver, but the chief engineer breaks it up.
Yep.
And of course he doesn't really get angry at Yan, which was nice. They avoided that cliche.
Yeah.
So that was pretty nice. And I mean, eventually he's getting better at the races, and then I think this is where we get to the really big moment of this.
Well, almost. Then we get to the whole signing, which then he brought his love interest with him to Japan.
Yeah,
they get the signing, and they were kind of in this nice, montage of living the good life, basically.
Yeah, and I mean, we see the actor that plays the creator of Gran Turismo, and he's basically oh, I made this simulator. It took a while to make sure we got it right. Yeah. And now that there's someone that can prove they can actually race because of this, here he is.
Yeah.
That was a really nice scene.
Yep.
Small little nitpick here, since they were in Tokyo. We never got to see any anime banners, and there were no Gojira things around.
No, but I mean they were focusing a lot more of the character and just living the life, basically.
Yeah, but I mean when you go out to Japan, you'll see an anime banner, or you'll see these little Gojira monuments, or little Gojira merchandise in some places. It would have been a nice little touch if they had that in there.
Definitely, for sure.
And of course, yeah, they're living the good life. They're partying. They're going out having fun. Which, I mean, it's Tokyo. You gotta have a little fun at least.
Yep. And then that's, after all that signing bonus and all that sort of stuff, then he buys something for Jack, and then they eventually get to the, like you said, to this big moment, which was the first race. And I think this was in Germany or something like that.
It was in Germany, yeah.
Yeah. So they were racing, because it was a racing, it was a normal race. Then he gets on which, again, we were all, this is kind of a common knowledge, I believe, but for all of us, when you go up on a hill, when you're kind of like driving up on like a hill, kind of going up and then down, we all know if you go too fast, you have a good chance of your car flying a little bit, which we all know it is super dangerous.
Like, a real life example I can compare this to is in California, there's a lot of like hilly roads where if you go too fast, you can't go too fast on a Californian hill. And there was this one video I saw where someone was like in a sports car or something else, I believe. He was going too fast, and he like flew into the air. He like flew into the air, and then...
It was like a night video or something like that?
Yeah,
where
yeah,
it's like,
it was that.
I think it was that one, yeah. And he flew in the air, but luckily for him, his car bounced, basically, or bounced on the four wheels, basically. Now, there was damage to the car, for sure, but it was lucky that it was just, he landed.
Yeah, that was a Fast and Furious driver, if I'm being honest with myself.
That was. But the point is, that occurred to him, but not landing on his four wheels. It was more so of, you're flying like this, now you're flipping, and very fatal.
Yeah, like what he like flips upside, and I gotta admit this was really impressive to watch. Yeah. It was about as impressive as the truck flip from The Dark Knight, because I think that was an actual truck that they flipped, and it flipped like this and landed on its backside.
Yeah, and they did slow motion on it too, so you're just like, oh no. And even the dad was like, is that his car? Boosh.
Yeah, and then he like flips up, and then he's like crashing all around, and then he like slams into these spectators, and this is kind of where we have to talk about the controversy surrounding this film.
Well, I mean, that part of the film, again, this is talking about the racing being dangerous. That is hold true for those spectators as well. Because if cars could go flying in an actual racetrack, imagine the dangers that could hold for audiences. I've seen clips of like a car flying and it hits the, like the bleachers and stuff like that, and it's like, that could happen.
Yep. And I mean, this is where the controversy of the film comes in, is that this is actually something that happened to Yan in one of his races, where the car flipped up, I believe he flipped up, and then it crashed all around, and then it killed one spectator in the crowd. And of course, people have been going online, and they're basically like, you're using this as a motivational moment, when really it was a tragic event, and we find that pretty tasteless. Like, a lot of people in their reviews have brought that up. Me personally, I didn't think about it too much, because I don't want to get too ingrained in all that stuff.
Yeah, no, because this was a fatal moment. But it's like, I don't think it was treated as that, because the character himself treated it as a scary moment, and he was blaming himself.
Yeah, we see him in like the hospital, and he's like, I did this, I killed that person.
And it's like, bro, that was just a freak accident, not your fault.
Yeah, they were all telling him, you didn't do it, it was a freak accident. And even the chief engineer sort of blamed himself. But really, the chief engineer's not the one to blame. It's the people who let the spectators, sit there in the first place.
Yeah.
Why not put the spectators somewhere safer?
Yeah. Well, or even that, just like have something to be like, I don't know, just like if you know that particular spot has a danger of a car flipping like that, why on earth do you have like a spectator seat there when you know the potential danger of a car flying on a hill like that? Yeah,
I mean, all they have to do is just set up a camera there, and then if the camera gets knocked out, no lives got lost.
No, but it's like, yes, you have to pay for a new camera, but at least no lives are lost.
Exactly, and it's like, the chief engineer is not to blame for this. It's the people who set up the event.
Yeah, it's like, you don't need a spot right when, like a hilly spot to where it's like, they could literally fly and potentially kill somebody.
And it's kind of interesting how like Yan was the only one affected when all the other drivers were going pretty fast, you know?
Yeah.
Or maybe they weren't going as fast as he was.
Probably not, I would imagine. I'm pretty sure like every other driver probably did, even though they were like really, driving at Mach speed. But probably slow down enough to where it's like you're not flying, basically.
Yeah. And so, like, he basically does recover from the accident. And he's talking to his girlfriend about how, like, I don't think I can do this anymore, or something like that.
Well, it's now playing. Now it gets to the point of like now you are scarred. Basically, this is a PTSD moment. It's like, bro, not only you nearly died, but yeah, somebody else that was part of that accident died as well.
Yeah, and actually, this is a comparison I can make with this like traumatic PTSD moment. If like in the Pixar Cars films, mostly the second and the third one, we can skip the second one entirely. But in the first and the third one, basically there's these moments where like there were these traumatic accidents and they affected the car characters in a specific way. The third one specifically, when Lightning McQueen gets in that accident and it like overturns and flips them. I probably need to watch the movie again, but that doesn't like that sort of like. It basically tells Lightning McQueen to train the new generation of racers because you're not what you once were, Mr. McQueen.
No, because it's like you are past your prime, basically. And all these new cars are coming are a lot more faster.
Exactly. That's why he trains the new generation. But that doesn't happen here. Basically, this was a traumatic moment for Yan, but it doesn't deter him from wanting to keep on racing.
Not quite, because it scarred him and he was doubting himself, but he needed something, which was Jack coming in and, he was just like, look, the reason why that incident that I was talking about earlier, or the reason why what happened that day, I also was in that exact same scenario.
And there's this scene where he's like basically describing his experience and how he had to quit racing and he basically had to train other people to race. And now that I think about it, I just realized what this scene reminds me of.
And that is?
In the first Cars film, when we see Doc Hudson, he was like, I used to be this great racer, but then I got into this accident that you see on the newspaper clipping. And when they fixed me up and repaired me, I was ready to go back, but then they told me, well, you're past your prime, and you're going to have to go to the sideline while we train the new racers. It kind of reminded me of that almost.
Yeah, but in Jack's case, it was like he felt like he killed another driver or something like that, and he stopped. And he was saying, I know you're about to follow the same path, but at the same time, you're not, because you want to get back out there.
And he can tell that Yan wants to get back out there in a way.
In a way, yes. But it still is like lingering in the back of his mind.
Yep. And then, of course, Yan does get back into the game, and then that's where we get to the final race of this film.
Which was the famous
24-hour race in France.
Yep. Le Mans.
Le Mans, I believe it was.
Yep. And it's a 24-hour race. I'm like, Jesus Christ. But it's like, you need 3 drivers, and it's like, which they brought in.
Imagine if it was a 48-hour drive.
Yeesh.
That'd be like 2 days worth on the track.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, it's already bad enough as it is for being like an entire day, and of course you have like breaks in between.
Yeah, you see these little breaks in between where like they're fixing up the cars and the mechanics are working on them with like their drills and stuff.
And then you have like sometimes you have like the drivers themselves swapping in and out, and it's just like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, because I remember in the Cars films, we would see these like little mechanic vehicles working on the car characters, replacing their wheels and all the other mechanics. Well, in this case, for this movie, it was humans, not anthropomorphic cars.
Yeah, so they're kind of like doing all this stuff, and they brought in the other top 3 guys, or 2 more guys that were in the top 3 in the academy.
Mm-hmm.
So they brought those guys along.
Basically to watch the show, and then the dad...
Actually, it was more of competing as well, because remember, it's a 3-person race, or team race.
Yeah, and I mean, it was kind of hard to identify most of the other racers, because they don't emphasize on those guys too much.
No, but one of the guy was the one that had like that split, that split tire or split second.
Oh, now I just remember, like, he was hitting Mach 5 or Mach 6 on the little speedometer.
Yeah.
And I was like, ah! And then he crashes.
Yeah.
I think that's what I remember now. Yeah.
Or, well, one of the races. Anyways, though, Then we get, 3-person race, and then at the beginning of the film, or beginning of the Le Mans race, you have the Stripes guy, hitting something like that. Then all of a sudden, he flew himself into the walls, and then he started to go on fire.
Yeah, and that was another impressive crash. It looked really photorealistic, and so he crashes, and then poof, it explodes. And I turned to you, and I was like, "Yeah, he's dead," because there's no way he survived that explosion.
Well, and also I'm like, "What the heck?" It's like that's similar to the story that Jack told.
Yeah, and that was another moment where he just kind of froze, and then he slowed down because he's like, "I'm not doing that again."
Yeah, because it flashed back to him in that moment too. Even though the guy's like, "No, he's fine, he's fine." It's like, yeah, he may be fine, but boy, he's probably broke something at least.
Yeah, but at least that driver, they got him out safely. So I'm guessing he must have worn the most fireproof uniform ever.
I would imagine. I'm pretty imagining that a lot of these race drivers, though, because of how dangerous it can be and the explosiveness, they have padding, or like fire resistance padding on their, jackets and stuff like that.
I kind of wonder if they applied that to Air Force people.
I would probably imagine so a little bit because of the explosive damage. But then again, the impact itself could, it still could kill because of the explosive impact.
Yeah.
But at least if you're able to get out of it, though, if you're if the explosion didn't kill you, and if you're still alright to get out of there, again, it's that padding still that you can, crawl out or get out of there, lip your way out of there, get yourself not on fire, and then you're fine. But fine in its sense of you're alive, but what about the rest of your body? Like, are you limping, or are you broken body parts anywhere?
Maybe he had a few broken body parts or bones, but we didn't see that.
No, he was limping though for sure. So I would imagine something like that.
Yeah.
Which again, main, protagonist, now is having those flashbacks, PTSD of like, oh god, I don't want to go through that again. And that's where Jack was like, have an idea, and he played his calming music.
Yeah, and that sort of got him back into the mood. He's like, get angry! You gotta get angry!
Well, it got him back because it refocused him, but at the same time it's like, not now! Not now!
Yeah, we're not losing this race. You're not going back to 27th position or whatever's lower than that.
Yeah, or it's like, not now, stop playing that music. And it's like, you're mad? Well, of course I am. You play that music under this moment. That's alright. Get angry.
And actually, the get angry moment, it kind of reminded me of another sports film, Dodgeball. In Dodgeball, the coach is basically telling one of the players on the average Joe's team, get angry! And so he sees his wife is cheating on him, and then he's like, "Argh, argh." Then he gets up the dodgeball, and he's like, ah!
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of that, so that was a nice little reminder.
Or you have the longest yard moment, where it's just like, I think it was the Kevin Hart or something, another character. I don't know if it's Kevin Hart, but it was another character. He was some one of the big guys, Hey, oh, he did this to you, or he did. It's like, he said what, or he did what? It's like, yeah.
Which film was this? Because I don't.
Longest Yard.
I've never seen that one.
It's a football film. It's an Adam Sandler football film.
Adam Sandler. Are you talking Waterboy? That's the other Adam Sandler football film.
Not this one. This one's called The Longest Yard, where a former famous quarterback, he got himself into trouble, got him in jail, and to get out of there, early, was to win a football game against the security guards.
I've never seen that because I'm not really the big Adam Sandler guy. I'm not a huge fan of him, but anyway. So anyway, yeah, after the moment where he tells him, the music's going to help you focus and it's making me mad and get angry, he continues on the race and he's getting better and he's, advancing. But at some point or another, there's a storm that comes in. Oh,
yeah, that was, in the middle, yeah. It was, at the 1200, the 12-hour mark.
Yeah, this storm comes in and I'm like, storm's coming.
Yeah.
And then we see them driving in the inclement weather, but there's really no accidents in the inclement weather.
No, I was almost expecting an accident or a near accident moment happening, which never occurred. And then we get to the 21-hour mark, which was the one of the other guy. He was cramping up a bit, so now Yeah.
And this was kind of a really interesting moment where you see like all the car parts coming together, and we see Yan in his gaming room, and he's playing. We see him playing, and he's like, "I've been on this track before. I can do this."
Well, it's like he's prepping himself for it and stuff like that. He's like, mentally getting ready, and yeah, it was like, all right, we gotta pull him in. You gotta finish this, and he's like, all right, I'm ready. So he gets in. He's driving out there. And then that's where his gaming moment sort of kicks in a little bit, like, because it's like, yeah, I've driven this race 1,000 times. Allow me to drive my own line, basically.
And they let him do that, and of course you see the red line forming on the road, along with the yellow line of the other player.
Yeah, and it's like, because you have like montage moment of not only that, but you also got the moment from the beginning where the dad was asking him, why don't you follow the other cars? And it's like, because if I do this, I can easily, get, pass by him quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Which he followed that with his own line, basically, or the assisted line of like, hey, take this route, you'll pass him.
And of course he does, and then eventually he keeps working his way up the ranks. He keeps working up, and I was almost around like I think it was the 16th hour. He was like in 4th position. And I was like, oh, if he keeps this up, he might get up to 1st place.
Well, yeah, but we're getting to that last race or the last lap now marker, which was between him and Gold 1.
And of course, they're having their little rivalry with each other. They're racing, but he keeps his focus and he doesn't allow himself to crash. And eventually, he does beat the Gold driver, and he gets up to 3rd place.
Yep, by this time a better margin. It was like right here, basically, where it's like he passed him and. It's like, yep, that's a good mark. He passed him by a decent yardage.
Yeah, and so he does get 3rd place, and there was this kind of moment where I'm like, the Gold driver's going to confront him about beating him, which does not happen at all, actually.
No, it doesn't. But then I was like, wait, what happened to... Who was 1st and 2nd?
Yeah, and I don't think they ever said who were 1st and 2nd.
No, they didn't say who was 1st and 2nd. The important thing was he got up to the podium.
Yeah, and then he got to hold the trophy, and he was drinking the champagne to celebrate his victory.
Yeah.
And then towards the end, we sort of get this photos of the real Jan Martenberg with the actor.
Yeah.
And you see the similarities, and then of course there's this little text saying that he was his own stunt double.
Yeah, which was kind of funny, interesting that he was his own stunt double.
Well, I mean, if you're gonna have a stunt, at least use the real racer.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah, it was kind of like in some of the end of other biography or biopics, they have this text explaining the legacy of a character or whatever they want to go on and do.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the biopics based on famous singers do this a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them that do that. But I mean, yeah, and then the end credits montage is kind of like this glory reel of basically how they make the game and all the cars they scan in. Which was very advertisement-like, I will not lie.
Yep. And then you also want to say at the very end, because you thought there would have been a quick advertisement for Gran Turismo.
Yeah, like some sort of post-credit of sorts. I was kind of thinking maybe we'll get a secret advertisement for Gran Turismo, or Sony's going to do some nice PlayStation ad. Maybe they'll have an ad for the PlayStation 5, and then it says, "Play has no limits, PlayStation." I kind of expected that to show up.
Yeah, no, but I was doubting that a little bit because I was like, not only the people were leaving, a little bit, which, because you're like, hold. But I was like, once I saw the custodian people, the other workers coming in and start cleaning up, I was like, I don't think it's happening.
Well, it's just, I've been conditioned by Marvel to expect stuff towards the end.
Yeah.
So I was like, whatever that was going to be. But there was nothing at the end, and then we just walked out feeling pretty satisfied with what we saw.
Yep.
So yeah, I would say this was a pretty good sit through the theater. I will not lie. This was a good sit.
Yeah, it was a good sit, that's for sure.
Because what I really liked about Gran Turismo was how realistic the action and the racing felt. Nothing in this felt fake, and everything looked pretty real.
Yeah.
Even the simulations looked like how the video game should look, and I liked that sense of realism with these races and how dangerous they are and how they emphasize on it.
Yep.
The characters, if you've seen other sports films, you know how these people are going to act. But at least there was some good development with them, and there was some portrayals that I liked, like the chief engineer, really liked him.
Yeah.
He felt like he was very doubting at first, but then he sort of realized this kid knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
And he basically wanted to push him to like get better and become the best there is, which he did. And I like that it did not turn into a psychotic shouting match. It felt more realistic.
Yeah.
And I liked how the dad character started out very doubting, but then by the end he was supporting his son.
Yeah.
Which was nice. And it's just nice to have positive portrayals like that.
Yeah, and it was getting to the positive mark where it's just like, well, now it's like because he made it up there, but now all of a sudden the accident happened, the fatal accident happened, but now it's just like you got to support him because he just went through that, survived. He needs support.
Yeah, and I didn't mind the acting too much. I mean, it's not going to be Oscar-worthy acting. It was all right for what it was. I would say Orlando Bloom was the best actor in this movie.
Yeah.
Because it's been a while since we've seen him, and he did really good in this. I will not lie.
Yeah.
I liked the cinematography, all the landscape, all the citywide shots, and all the ways they filmed these races. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
The video game stuff, some people are kind of off-put by that with what they put in, but I didn't really mind that too much.
I didn't mind it either. I think for the placement one, whenever it was like ding on top a little bit, I was like, okay, it helps the audience because it's like, all right, you're at this place, or something like that. Or the transition, it's like, all right, here's the assistant marker. It's like, all right, he's going to take this path, and then the other driver's taking this path. So it's like a suggested route. It's like, okay, break, jump the gun.
Yeah, they even had a video gaming thing in like the middle of the cop chase where it's like, evade cop evaded.
I was really going to be hoping for like that one moment though where it's like, hey, goal achieved, and all of a sudden it's like, beep beep. It's like that alert.
Oh, the achievement alert thing?
Well, it's like, hey, you avoided the cop, congratulations. And all of a sudden it's like gold achieved. You did it. It's like, yeah, but all of a sudden it's like red alert, and it's like, wait, what? And it's like, oh, Dad's outside waiting. It's like, yeah, you're kind of screwed.
They could have had a joke maybe where, like, you know how when you unlock an Xbox achievement or a PlayStation trophy, you get this little ding?
Yeah.
They could have done that, but thankfully they didn't do it. I did not see that at all.
No, but it would have been funny. It's like, hey, nice job. Beep, beep. Dad. And it's like, parent waiting outside. It's like, you're screwed.
Yeah. I mean, the trailer kind of gave me the impression that maybe the cops would have gotten him, but thankfully that didn't happen. It was just the angry parents. Which, by the way, I mean, I don't know how it works in the UK with reckless drivers and how the parents approach that, but I do know American parents are not very kind when it comes to that thing.
No, they're not, especially with how sort of common it can be on the roads.
Yeah. And I mean, I also liked the inclusion of the rock music. It was really nice to hear a good soundtrack like that, especially from all those hits by Black Sabbath. They used one song of theirs twice, actually. The one, I don't know how the lyrics go, but they used one of them twice.
Yeah. Well, I know they kept playing the main protagonist's music more than a few times, during his calm, try to calm him down.
Yeah, it was Kenny G and Enya they were playing.
Yeah, Enya,
And she's the one that did Sail Away, Sail Away. She's the one. Is she the one that did that? Because if that's the case, wow. I mean, I know her because I've got one of her albums in like my family's album collection. But it's like that's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because I mean, wow. But yeah, I mean, and I would say in terms of Neill Blomkamp's directing credits, this is a positive direction for him to take. Because it's like after all those sci-fi films, you've found something where you can sort of play to your strengths, but at the same time, you're just giving the audience a good movie to watch and just have a good time with.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And I liked that this movie felt real. It felt like it took place in the real world, and there was no cheese factor to it. Because there's tons of sport films where the characters act cartoony or very cheesy, like Dodgeball, for instance. If you've ever seen Dodgeball, basically Ben Stiller's character is so over the top in that.
Yeah.
And all the other characters are kind of weirded out by him.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, it's nice to have a sports film where there's no cheese factor to it.
Yeah.
Everything feels real. It feels very grounded.
Oh, yeah.
Which is actually something that Neill Blomkamp did with his sci-fi films. He made them feel very gritty and grounded. Like, this is what the future could look like. And it's nice that he translates that to this film really well.
Yeah.
But if they did want to increase the cheese factor, there was one thing I was thinking of. If they were going to make this film cheesy, like have the Gold Driver do this really cheesy thing where he's like getting super cocky and he's on the road and he's like, I am the Knight Rider, I am the toe cutter. Mad Max reference.
Yeah.
Like they could have done that where he would like, I am the Knight Rider, I'm the fast one. Or they could have had a Fast and Furious joke if they wanted to.
Then it would have been more about family.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking, like, what if Vin Diesel shows up as a cameo in this, and he's, like, complimenting Jan Mardenborough or whatever? Yeah. That would have been totally fabricated.
Yeah.
That should have been the post-credit. Like, as a fictional character racer, and he's complimenting Jan Mardenborough. Man, that would have been kind of interesting.
And that would have taken a lot, then, like you said, it would have taken a lot out of the whole, like, left field, like, not, like, you know, based on a true story out of it, like...
Yeah, but thankfully they didn't do that. And let's be honest, Vin Diesel's super expensive. There's no way they could get him into this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, for the most part, you know, I think we had a good time watching this. Like, no time felt wasted. I would definitely watch this again.
It was definitely a really good film to watch, that's for sure.
And the way it was shot, too, like, I would definitely have watched this on an IMAX, because... When we were sitting where we were sitting in the theater, and the cars, the vibrations and the noises, you could sort of feel it and hear.
Yeah.
If we had sat a little closer, we could have had the full effect.
Probably.
But we were placed pretty well in the theater.
Yeah. Which, funny enough, before the movie started and stuff like that, there were some seating miscommunications.
Yeah, because there were some people in our seats and they didn't realize we did online reservation, and I'm like, these are our seats. I think... we showed them the numbers, and then they realized, this is not F1 and F2.
Yeah, and then it's like, where are they? It's like, they're right over there. Oh, okay. Then when they went over there, one of the big guy was sitting in their spot, so then...
Yeah. And, I mean, you know, there's been a couple of instances where that happened to me, where there was seat miscommunication, I had to get moved.
Yeah.
There's been a couple of instances, different theater, where that happened.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and I mean, you know... I think I walked into this thinking, like, this is not going to be the greatest thing ever made, but it might just be a good time.
Yeah.
Because I've heard some very mixed to positive reactions on this film, actually.
Yeah.
A lot of them. Like, there were some people that were like, well, this is not as good as it is, and some people were like, no, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think with this one, there's no disconnect between the critics and the audiences, because the critics were more mixed to positive, and same thing with the audience.
Yeah.
They're all kind of on the same page with this one.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's nice to have equal ground, you know, because we've had so many critic and audience disconnects over the years, so it's nice that we're all on the same ground, and we're just expressing thoughts that are similar, you know?
Yeah.
So that's nice. Although one review I did see of Gran Turismo, the guy was like... This film is for gamers who feel like their life choices are not respected enough, and I'm like, how do I comment on that?
That one I like to call a little bit reaching a little bit. That's reaching a little bit, even though it's like you're not. It's it's not completely out of the like. It's kind of like that quote from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's like maybe out of line or whatever. But maybe sort of right at the same time. It's like, you're reaching, but at the same time, it's like, you're not wrong. But you are reaching a little bit.
I mean, yeah, maybe there's been instances where, like, gamers' life choices were not respected, and some people were like, don't get too addicted to the games or something like that, because there's been many cases of gaming addiction.
Yeah, I mean, they're good about, but it's like, at the same time, if you feel like you're really good, which is why esports is now a thing, with Call of Duty or League of Legends, and they do make good amount of money playing their respective games on that level.
I do know esports I think it's been around since the late 90s when QuakeCon was formed. That's when all the players of Doom or Quake came together in Dallas, Texas, and they were like competing in death matches.
Yeah.
And I think I remember at one of the QuakeCons, one of the players won a Ferrari that John Carmack donated to them.
Yeah.
That's a big prize if you're playing Doom or Quake.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. But it's just like, if you're good at it, you can compete at a very high level and potentially win some good amount of money.
I'm pretty sure there's also speed running competitions too.
I believe that's also part of the esports thing. So kind of like boss fights is like how quickly you can beat the boss or something like that compared to like the other people.
I have actually beaten Shadow of the Colossus speed run once.
Mm.
There was this achievement where it's like, can you beat the game in hard mode under this time? And I did, because I knew all the locations
tricks, yeah.
of where the bosses, locations of the bosses and how to take them out.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. But I think really the mindset of like video games aren't respected, that was kind of a thing when they were starting, when the inception of them, like around the NES or like very early on. But nowadays I think people's attitudes have shifted to where it's a little more accepted. It's become part of our culture, really.
Yeah, of the gaming culture a little bit, yeah.
Because I know there was a ton of like reactions to where these games are so violent they'll cause people to like do all these bad things and no, it's like there were other factors, not the games.
Yeah. Just because they play violent games, does that mean they will become violent people? It's like, if you play a cooking game, does that mean you're going to become a chef?
Not exactly.
Yeah.
But
Not exactly.
But in this case, it's like you got a guy who's playing these racing games. It doesn't automatically mean he'll go to real racing, but for him, it was a special case.
It was a special case, yeah. This was a special case. That is definitely for sure. Of like him using his talent of playing the game so much that he was able to translate that into actual racing.
Yeah.
He just had to be conditions right, and he met those conditions.
Mm-hmm. Now, if they can only make a movie about someone who played an FPS so much, and then they got into the military and they were a really good sharpshooter.
I believe that was an 80s film. Not first-person shooter, but I think there was a game. It was an arcade game. I forgot the movie. I know my dad knows this.
Was it The Last Starfighter?
It was like an arcade game where he was like playing it. He got like a high score, and then all of a sudden these people...
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's The Last Starfighter or something. I'd have to look it up again. But he gets this high score, but it turns out the game's actually a simulator for a real-life intergalactic war.
Yeah.
At least in the film's world, there's an intergalactic war going on.
Yeah, which is like, high score. Well, now you're a pilot.
Yeah, and it's like they also adapted that plot for a Batman Beyond episode where there's this gamer and he's playing this game called Centuries of the Last Cosmos, which has a lot of references to Star Wars.
Yeah.
And so he plays it, and then he's called to the game creator's home, but he's not actually the creator, he's the producer. And then he tricks him and these other kids into thinking Centuries of the Last Cosmos is based off of a real-life war in the galaxy.
Yeah.
And then he tricks the kids into doing all these crimes for him, and then the truth gets out, and then the creator and Batman and these kids, they expose the producer and they get him arrested. Yeah. So that was a really interesting episode, actually.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, like, it wasn't really The Last Starfighter case, but I'm just saying, what if they made a film where a guy played Doom or Call of Duty or Gears so much, and was so good at it that the military is like, we're going to make you a sharpshooter.
I would say more of like the Call of Duty aspect than like Gears or something like that. Just because Gears, it's third person.
Yeah.
Per se, with a machine gun or a chainsaw that's attached to a machine gun.
Yeah, and I mean, I remember seeing a scene in a war film where, like, one of the soldiers was playing Gears of War in his downtime.
Yeah.
It was the Hurt Locker. There's a scene where a soldier's playing Gears of War.
Probably.
But it would have been kind of funny if they added a small line where he's like, hey, you're so good at that game, we could make you really good with your run and gun skills in combat.
Yeah.
But they didn't do something like that. But then again, that wasn't the focus of the movie.
No, but I would have mentioned like a Call of Duty type thing where it's like, yeah, it looks like your KD ratio is really good.
Mm-hmm. If only they knew how some of those COD kids were like in real life. Because I've seen videos of like kids getting so rage-filled with COD, you know?
Yeah.
It's like if only the military knew how rage-fueled those kids got.
Probably, but at the same time, they could probably, like, we can utilize that to our advantage.
That's true. But then the military should like tell the kids, okay, combat, it's nothing like Call of Duty. I'm just going to throw that out there. It's nothing like that.
Yeah, it's like, when you die, you don't respawn at another location.
And you don't regenerate health. That's a myth.
Yeah, it's like, no. When you die, you die.
Yep. I mean, they could probably tell them that. I don't know. But what's another gaming example I can think of? There's got to be another one. There's got to be another I can think of where, like, just because you're good at the game, it doesn't mean it'll translate well into what you're doing.
Yeah.
I got, let's say someone becomes a sports coach and plays so many Madden games, and he's really good at coaching his virtual team.
Yeah.
But then in real life, well, his coaching might not translate well.
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, or FIFA or any other sports type games where it's like you may be really good at play designs, or you're able to get the team to play really well because it's like the schematics, but it's like, can you translate that from the sidelines? Because when you play Madden, you're facing, or like how you're looking at the offense sometimes, not so much from the sideline, so you're not too sure. A lot of time the alignments of the offense, the opposing team offense, or the opposing team defense. You're viewing it from the side, so you're just like, where are they? What are they? Versus like if you're playing Madden, you're just like, oh, I see them. Looks like it could be a cover 3. I'm going to run it because they're backing off a little bit. Or it's like, man, press. Or it's like, man, press. All right, I can get them over the top. I have a quick receiver. Or it's man, but they're back a little bit. It's like blitz. I'm going to try to see if I can do a quick pass on him.
Or what if, like, in some strategy games, you have to sort of strategize how to coordinate your military and your attacks.
Yep.
What if someone was like, well, I could translate that into a general role in the military, but then the military's like, just because you're playing the game doesn't mean you'll make a good general.
Yeah, or it's just like, well, first of all, yeah, that, and B, you know how much you have to do to get up here to general rankings? You have to be in the front line first, soldier.
Yeah. Or what about a zombie apocalypse game where this would be kind of funny if someone said, just because you may have survival knowledge and a few skills from the game, it doesn't mean you'll work well in an actual zombie outbreak.
Yeah.
If that was the case.
Yeah.
What's another one I can think of? I gotta think of a couple more examples, or maybe we exhausted all of them.
There was a funny scene I remember it was one of the Kevin. This was, I think it was like a Kevin Hart. No. But it was like, I think it was like 21 Jump Street or something like that, where it's like the two, I think like Ice Cube and another guy, but the other guy was like looking around. It's like, what are you doing? I'm looking for ammo. It's not a video game. You can just go around people's body buying ammo. Buying ammo.
Oh wait, I just thought up of another one actually. There's a boxing film called Real Steel, which is basically there's no humans in the ring; it's robots fighting each other. And the main kid character, he basically knows commands of the Japanese robot. And Hugh Jackman's like, "Where'd you learn that? Playing video games?" There would have been a funny line if he said, "Just because you played the game, it doesn't mean you're going to be a good boxer or know how to box well in the ring with another robot."
Yeah.
That's another one too. Just because you may know how to fight or study the moves, it doesn't mean you'll be a good boxer.
Yeah.
Or what about a ninja or samurai game? Just because of what you see in the game, it doesn't mean you'll make a good samurai or ninja.
Or just a swordsman person in general.
Or maybe if you played a superhero game like a Batman game and you study the moves of how Batman fights, someone's like, just because you studied the moves, you're not going to be a crime fighter.
And it's like, watch me, and it's like, congratulations, now you're a vigilante, and now the government's gonna come after you.
Yeah. Or a final example, actually. Just because you're good at GTA to a point, it doesn't mean you'll be a good criminal. If, like, someone got the idea, I could probably commit GTA on someone's car and do all these crazy acts, and then the cops come after me.
It's like you do realize that they'll just chase you down and not stop.
Yeah, because you can't outrun the police. You can never outrun the police.
No, but it's like even if you did, they're just gonna signify that the national, government, like, hey, have your cops on high alert.
And there's no 5-star rating that'll get applied to you like in GTA 5.
Well, no, at that point it's like, yeah, there's no 5-star that will send in the military. You're still gonna get the cops after you.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what you do, you can't outrun them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's this kind of thing. Only special cases can translate their gaming skills into real life stuff, as we have seen with Mr. Martinborough, but, maybe there's someone else out there. I don't really know. Yeah. Now, before we wrap everything up, there's one more thing I want to say, so just hang on a sec, folks. Okay, so the last thing I want to say, and then we got to wrap this up, is a big major question here. Does Gran Turismo break the video gaming movie curse?
I say it continues to help that a little bit, because I think the original kind of like breaking of it was both the Sonic movies and then the Super Mario movie.
I mean, that's one thing people have said. For me, this movie, it doesn't necessarily break the gaming curse, because we haven't had the greatest adaptation of a gaming film yet, but this is, I would say, a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it helps. But I think the initial break was the Sonic movies and the Super Mario movie, the new one.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the Mario film. I have not seen any of the Sonic films, and I think the reason I never saw any of the Sonic films was because I was not a Sonic child growing up, so I don't have that foundation to, like, build on. But if I were to watch the Sonic films today, I'm not quite sure how I would react, but maybe at some point or another I'll see them. I just don't know how I'm going to react.
Yeah.
Because I'm not that much of a Sonic fan. But with the Mario film, I mean, I thought it was an okay movie. I know there's a lot of people that really enjoyed it, you especially. Well, I will give it the Mario film credit in that at least its setting and character designs were faithful to how Mario should look. It's just the execution of it is what I would have done better.
See, I know you don't like Jack Black as Bowser. I actually really do like it. It's like the equivalent of having Jim Carrey as Dr. Eggman.
Oh, I mean...
And Sonic. You both got... You hit it out of the park, really. You did a really nice job with the two villains are these guys. These actors that are, even though they're comedians, and we see them as the comedians, but they do such a good job as the villains of the respective franchises. Jim Carrey as Dr. Eggman, the crazy scientist.
Well, I mean,
or Jack Black as the big, giant turtle dragon.
Well, I mean, I can't speak to Dr. Robotnik and Jim Carrey. I'd have to watch that, but again, I have no Sonic foundation to build on. With Mario, see, I would have casted someone more serious and scary as Bowser, and Jack Black, he doesn't really fit that profile for me.
Well, I see it because I play a lot of the Mario games, because even though in the original, like, the Super NES or the Nintendo 64, he was sort of like this intimidating guy. But then it's like, you have these Mario Party games and all these other ones where it's like, now he's starting to show his little bit more comedic side a little bit.
I mean, you could say that, but in terms of like a big, Mario adaptation, I would just have someone who's a little more threatening, a little more intimidating, and he would be a real, he would be an actual threat in the same way that Sauron is a threat to the characters of Middle-earth.
Yeah, but I mean, Sauron was a little bit more of like... That whole is like a book was a lot more of like an actual threat or more intimidation. Bowser, yes, he is intimidating, but he's a little bit comedian, comedy a little bit in and out of himself a little bit.
I mean,
wait, what?
I mean, yeah, I probably saw that in a few ads for Mario, but I guess whenever I played any Mario game, I just always kind of saw him as this really serious threat that Mario's got to take out. And I guess with Jack Black, you can't really get that, and it was really distracting to me.
See, I would understand that notion if it was sort of, I would say, Ganondorf from Legend of Zelda. Not so much with Bowser, because again, Bowser, he has a little bit comedic side a little bit. Ganondorf doesn't really.
Well, unless you play the CDI games and you see those hilarious cutscenes that have been made fun of.
I will say this much. Not as a representative of the Legend of Zelda fandom, but I know a friend who is a dedicated Legend of Zelda. Don't try to speak that. It may be a joke and comedy from time to time, but in terms of serious talks, don't use that as like a part of the thing.
Oh, he hates the CDI games, doesn't he?
I would imagine so, because it's just like, it's probably one of those things you just go, that is a disgrace to Legend of Zelda.
In the same way that Hotel Mario is probably a disgrace to Mario.
Or like, like that Super Mario, like the old Super Mario movie or something like that.
Yeah, where the villain's a human, the Goombas are these lizard dinosaur things, and the Mushroom Kingdom's a dystopian city.
Yeah, because that's like a disgrace to Mario. Same way as that little like, my boy, that Legend of Zelda thing, like, oh gee, whams and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a disgrace to Legend of Zelda.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from on that, but I mean, from the very first Mario film that was live action, we've come a pretty long way since then. I mean, it's kind of a rocky road for video game films. And it's like we've had so many bad ones over the years, and of course the big bad two, Uwe Boll and Paul W.S. Anderson, they did not help.
No, but I would say these last few video game films have helped turn it around a little bit, where you could see the trend of video game movies becoming more of a thing.
I mean, yeah, what I would probably want is a filmmaker to like look up a playthrough of the game and then write a script or a storyline that's extremely faithful to the source material. Now you can make a few changes and do a few liberties, oh yeah, but still make it feel like this is adapted properly from the game, you know?
Yeah.
And there's been not a whole lot of examples of that.
Like with Zack Snyder, have been thinking about Gears of War.
I looked around for that, and I can't find the announcement surrounding that.
It's a rumor. It's a rumor, but he's interested.
I mean, the thing is, if Zack Snyder does Gears of War, I would probably want him to look up a playthrough and like write the script, or have someone help him write it based off of that.
Yeah.
And then there you go. There's your Gears of War movie.
Yeah, which will be interesting to see if it does go through. Who's going to be Marcus? Who's going to be Dom? Who's going to be General Rom? Who's going to be the Queen? Who's going to be all these other characters?
Well, I would say cast people that we don't know instead of recognizable names, and then there you go. You got the movie right there.
I know, but there are some. Well, depending if they want to do live action or I would imagine live action or like animation style sort of thing. But man, you can go both into a direction because, yeah, if it's live action, there are a few guys, you know, even if it is well-known actors, they could pull it off a little bit.
I mean, animation I could see them doing, because you could make that really gritty and violent. You could like show that on Adult Swim if you wanted to.
Could, but a little bit of animation style, but you would have to get a little bit more graphic and realistic with it a little bit.
Yeah, if they did live action, you would need like a $200 million budget to make it look good.
True, yeah, that, and plus again with the actors too, I have a feeling like you could get like a few well-known actors and some of them could fit certain roles really well.
I mean, they could, but I'd have to sort of see a promotional image to make sure if it works. I do know, in terms of live action video game films, there is a Borderlands film on the way, but they have not set a release date for some reason. Or maybe they did, I'd have to look at it again. But there's been I know it's been shot, and there's a cast of it.
See, for me, I'm like thinking like, if you have it similar to like the Mad Max kind of like vibe, that could be successful for Borderlands.
Might as well get Tom Hardy in since he was Mad Max.
Yeah, it has to be a similar vibe to like Mad Max or of the sort, because it's like, it's a outlanded, it's post-apocalyptic world, and everyone's gone crazy.
It's got this like cartoony graphic style to it, and there's like all this humor scattered throughout it. But we'll kind of see how that goes. I mean, I know it exists. They just have to get it out.
Ryan Reynolds, it fits you perfectly.
For Claptrap?
That'd be a really good one. Claptrap, or just like any other sort of characters, basically, or a berserker or something like that, or like one of those crazy gunmen or something like that.
I just don't know if Ryan Reynolds is in the Borderlands film. Maybe he is. I'd have to look at it again. But I do know he was Pikachu.
Pikachu and Detective Pikachu, and he was Deadpool. So, again, I was like, Borderlands, that would fit his, MMO.
Yeah, and I mean, in terms of like where PlayStation's going with their properties, because again, this is part of their production company. I was talking about this with you, but if they adapt some of their other properties, although one of which was already adapted, The Last of Us, which I have still not seen and probably never will, because I just think like The Last of Us was great as a game. If you're going to adapt it into a film, we're going to see the same story all over again. But the thing is, it has to be done in a way where I can really get invested in it. And there's probably people who have seen the show who are going to tell me, oh, it's good, it's good.
I think it would tell you a couple episodes were good, and I think I heard the third and fourth were kind of taken out of, taken a little bit out of it. I'm not too sure about the rest, but I heard like good positives, and there were some negatives. I don't know about the rest.
But I do know they may adapt the second game into a TV series, and oh dear, that's not going to go well.
Yeah.
Because the second game has too much controversy surrounding it.
Way too much controversy.
Yeah, way more than Gran Turismo's got right now.
Well, I think a lot more than that one, because, Last of Us Part 2 was very, very much controversial, especially with this controversy of winning the game of the year, even though a lot of gamers were like, nope.
Yeah, I mean, there was a massive disconnect between gamers and critics on that one.
Yeah, that was like the biggest disconnect ever, basically, at that point.
But I think a lot of Last of Us Part 2's faults can all be blamed on Neill Blomkamp, the game's writer and creator.
Yeah.
He basically let all of this happen, and no one stopped him and basically said, I think this is going to make some people angry. Can we course correct a bit?
Well, it was during the time when, like, the woke community was, like, at its peak.
Oh, yeah. That's an era I do not want to go back to.
It was when the woke was at its peak. So he kind of let some things slide, even though, again, it pissed off a lot of the gaming community. But for the woke end, it pleased them.
I mean, honestly, maybe The Last of Us did not need a sequel. Like, they could have just told a different story somewhere within the world and not involved Joel and Ellie. And maybe we would have reacted better to it.
Who knows, yeah.
Who knows? But the way Part 2 came out, that can all be blamed on Neill Blomkamp.
Yep.
Because one of his creative choices, it's a big death scene, by the way. Well, I can say he went to the Alien 3 and Terminator 6 school of writing, where you kill off characters that people really like, and the negative reactions follow.
The game's been out for a while. You can just say the guy, Joel's death.
Yeah, but I mean, I just don't really like saying it because it still makes people mad.
It does still, but it's like the game's been out for a while, so it's not like there's any spoiler warnings.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still something that made a lot of people mad.
Yeah.
I will say this, though. If PlayStation ever adapts the God of War series into a live-action series,
Yep.
well, here's the thing. You got to do the Greek era first, because that's what happens first. And my question would be, are they going to adapt it chronologically, or are they going to adapt it the release style the way the games were? Because in terms of chronology with God of War, Ascension is the one that takes place first.
Yeah.
It's a prequel to everything, and it's set after what we learn in God of War 1. Then after that, it's Chains of Olympus, which is another prequel.
Yeah.
Then it's the first game. Then we get the interquel, Ghost of Sparta. Then you get the second game, which is still one of my favorite sequels of all time.
Yeah.
Then you get the third one, which concludes the entire Greek saga.
And then we get to the Norse mythology in God of War 4 and 5.
Yeah, God of War 4 and then God of War Ragnarok.
Right.
So my question is, are they going to adapt it chronologically, or are they going to adapt it the way the games were released? Because all the prequels and stuff happened... Well, the first prequel happened before the release of God of War 3. The interquel happened after God of War 3. Then Ascension came out in 2013.
Well, then you could say something similar to the Gears of War if Zack Snyder does go ahead and get this thing going. Because there's Gears of Wars 1, 2, and 3. Then Judgment was, took place just slightly before Gears of War 1.
Yep, and then Gears of War 4 and then 5. And was 5 the one that caused some head scratchers?
There were some head scratchers, yeah. Because I know at the very end, I didn't play the game, but I did watch a lot of gameplays. But there were a couple of, there was a decision that you had to make. But, the end, which led to, different outcome. Well, different cutscenes. Same outcome, but different sort of cutscenes, basically.
Kind of like Resident Evil 7, where you got different cutscenes, but similar different outcomes.
Similar outcomes, but except the cutscenes are different. And you have to choose between the two characters, basically. The two characters are... one was Marcus's son, which in Gears of War 4 you play a lot of and you spend some time a little bit with. But in 5, you didn't spend time with him. You only know from the cutscenes a little bit of he's gone a little bit cold-hearted a little bit, but he does still misses the game. And then you have the other guy, who you did spend a lot more time with in Gears 5. He was with you in Gears 4, and he was still with you in Gears 5 when you were playing as a different character. So he's stuck with you, even though he's had another objective. So you have your choice of one of the two. And if you choose one, the other one dies.
Alright. I don't think Zack Snyder will go as far as Gears 5. They might, if he does get this made or something like that, they'll probably hand off the reins to someone else.
Yeah.
But I do know with God of War, if they adapt it, I would say don't give it a style. Make it look like an actual movie. Make it look like The Lord of the Rings if you have to, because The Lord of the Rings is one of the most epic film trilogies of all time. And God of War, in my mind, is one of the most epic based off of Greek mythology stories ever told,
Yeah.
you would want to make it look very epic and grand. And if they can pull it off really well, I'm sure it can work. But I mean, there's been talk of it for years, and it's like I don't even know if they're going to do it.
We'll see if it, they work or not.
And then for PlayStation, what other properties could they adapt? There was talk of a Sly Cooper movie. That much I know.
Yeah, and they have already done they already attempted with Uncharted, which I don't know if they still use that PlayStation thing with Uncharted.
Well, they might make follow-ups. I don't know how well it performed at the box office.
Yeah.
Let me think. What are some others? Oh, I kind of said one of the easier ones they could attempt is Shadow of the Colossus.
Oh yeah, because that's a one, that's a game that was a very popular game too.
Yeah, and I say it's one of the easier ones to adapt because it's very minimalistic. Like there's little to no dialogue, but it's a very visual story that has a lot of interpretation and maybe some subtlety to it.
Yeah.
And I do know the other Team Eco games are connected to Shadow of the Colossus to a point.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a big visual movie. All you have to do is just make it look big and epic and grand, and kind of shoot it like a Godzilla film almost, where these colossi are so grand and amazing to look at.
Yeah.
And you could have to still preserve the interpretation, because there's a lot of interpretation in Shadow of the Colossus.
It's like, oh my god, these are so majestic and so nice. Why do we have to,
Why do we have to kill them?
And it's like, oh yeah, we gotta kill them. And it's like, because he's sipping for a girl.
And that's when you find out the colossi aren't actually dangerous, they're gentle giants.
Yeah, they're gentle giants.
They only attack if they get provoked. Only the last colossi attacks you no matter what, because it's trying to defend itself.
Yeah, because I think at that point it's just like, you came here for a reason.
Yeah.
And all my other buddies are dead, so...
Yeah, I mean, and then what other... Oh, here's another one Sony could adapt if they wanted to. What if they adapted the Killzone series into movies?
That's another sort of Mad Max, as if I recall.
It's not really Mad Max. It's basically this, like, intergalactic war between the ISA and then the Helghast, who are basically space Nazis. So it's like, you could like, maybe adapt Killzone, but you'd have to make it, like, look as good as Star Wars or other intergalactic space opera set pieces.
Killzone. Oh, I'm thinking probably like... Am I thinking like Rust or something like that? Or what was another game that's like desert-y like, but it was like crazy or something like that?
Desert and crazy like Rage.
That's probably it. Rage.
I mean, if they adapted Rage, it would have to look like Mad Max because it's got that Mad Max setting to it.
Yeah.
Although I don't think id Software will let that happen after the fallout of the Doom film. Because like the Doom movie was a bomb and everyone knows it.
Well, yeah, some of the earlier 2000 stuff like that, and I guess there was another one like several years ago back, because there was the Doom for the 2000s, which was The Rock.
Yeah, and it's like you don't have The Rock play the Doom guy. What the heck? Missed opportunity.
And then you had this other Doom one, which was supposed to be like a prequel a little bit to the first Doom.
Are you talking about Doom Annihilation?
I believe so, yeah.
That's completely unconnected. That's something else.
Well, that's something else?
Yeah.
With the female lead going into the other world, and
she's going to hell to fight the demons.
Yep. And then she comes back, then she's sort of possessed, and they killed her or something like that.
Yeah, I'd have to watch it, but I know Doom fans really hate that movie.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's possibilities of what Sony could do, but the thing is like, they gotta adapt these properties properly. They gotta get people who at least like looked up the game, a playthrough, and wrote a script based off of that.
Yeah.
And it was pretty faithful to the storyline, because like I said, there have been instances where some screenwriters and filmmakers got close to adapting a game, but then their faithful script or story got tossed to the side for something else.
Yeah.
It's like, why? Why would you do that when they had it right there and you could have had big bucks flowing in?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. But it's been a long and rocky road for these kinds of movies.
Yeah.
Maybe they're getting better, but from what I can tell, this movie we just saw at least was, for me at least, a step in the right direction.
Or I guess for Sony perspective a little bit too, Final Fantasy.
Oh, there's so many of those that I think that would work best as an animated thing.
Yeah, but you could make it like, again, like a because each Final Fantasy is its own different story that you could still make like a one-time film or another film out of it. You don't have to like. I mean, you could connect it eventually because they do have like Cydia, which is connecting all the Final Fantasy characters and pitting them against each other, per se, or the heroes against the antagonists. But that's a different thing. But at least you could like do Final Fantasy 6 or Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 15 or 16 or 13 or 8 as its own individual films.
I mean, they could do that, but I guess they'd have to get Square Enix's approval before they go ahead with that.
Because I know they've done like smaller films as well, like Child's
Advent Children or something.
Advent Children, yep.
Yeah, I saw a trailer for that back in the day.
Yeah, so the Final Fantasy 7 Advent Children, so they've done that one. Or there's the Kingsglaive, which is Final Fantasy 15. Some smaller animated films, which ties to either in Kingsglaive case ties into the story, or in Advent Children is like a sequel to Final Fantasy 7.
I mean, whatever Square Enix decides to do, but the only property of theirs they've ever thrown out onto the big screen was Tomb Raider. That's the only one they've done, because, I mean, yeah, there's some Final Fantasy stuff, but Tomb Raider, I remember, is the one that got the most attention in terms of big screen publicity.
Yeah.
And even then, we know how both of those went.
Yeah.
The Angelina Jolie one got as far as 2, and then they never made any more.
Yeah.
And then the new one, well, they canceled the sequel, from what I heard.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if this is a step in the right direction, I mean, let's hope something else continues this, and we finally get really good video game movies that represent their source material very well, and this replaces the superhero movie craze. I mean, this very much could.
It could, yeah.
And I guess the last thing I'll mention, very, very last thing, is that this is not the first video game thing that Neill Blomkamp has worked on. Like I mentioned this to you, he had tried to get a Halo film off the ground when he was beginning.
Oh, yeah. Tried to, yeah.
But ultimately, he said the pre-production was a bit of a nightmare, and then he went to go make District 9 instead. Yeah. And then he did do some short films for Anthem, from what I remember. I never really saw them, because, I mean, Anthem is one of those failed live service games, which EA completely botched that.
Well, it was botched from the beginning. If you read read its reports, it was botched from the very beginning because they had no idea.
BioWare had no idea what they were doing.
Yep, because they had no idea, because they were still in its discussion phase and they were debating each other, so they were in a lot of disagreements. So when it came time to present, they didn't really have much to go off of except for one clip that they had with the jets or stuff like that, or kind of like the Iron Man.
Yeah,
which was what we saw, and then of course when they also posted that release time, again, nobody in that department knew about it until that day when somebody showed the guy clip and then they launched it. So that teaser that we got for Anthem at the time, that was the first thing that everybody in that department knew about.
I mean, it just would have been nice if Anthem was a single-player experience and not some live service game, but I guess I don't have a say in that.
Yeah.
But I guess, Anthem, it joins a long list of failed live service stuff like Evolve, if you remember that.
I remember Evolve a little bit, because that was the 1v, 4 or 5.
Yeah, 4 humans against a monster.
Yep.
That was probably one of the biggest, live online player games I remember. It was one of the biggest failures.
Yep, and then another failure, the more recent one, was the Avengers.
Yeah, they're going to shut the servers down this month.
Yep. But there has been some successful ones, like Destiny.
Yep, Destiny's one of the big ones, and then World of Warcraft, which, I mean, it's had so many expansions over the years.
Yep.
And then I think Diablo, maybe, but I don't know if that's technically live service.
No, but I mean, again, you also could make the case a little bit of the Old Republic. That EA, BioWare, MMO.
That wasn't really live service, that was more MMO. Yeah. But that was one of the more successful BioWare ones, to the point where it's getting a remake.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, maybe Anthem, it would have been better served as a single-player experience, not as a live service.
Yeah.
Maybe they needed more time to work on it, And if it got short films from Neill Blomkamp, I mean, again, had they retooled it, maybe they could have made a movie out of it, and it would have been worth checking out. But maybe in the multiverse, there's something like that exists. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess one other thing I'll bring up about Neill Blomkamp is that what other video games, if he ever gets maybe a Halo project, could he do it? I don't know. Because Halo would require like $200 million plus budget.
It will be a lot of money for a Halo type budget.
Or a budget that's like close to the Avatar films. I can see Halo getting really expensive if they wanted to.
Because you gotta get the armor, and then you have to get the aliens, and you have to get the flood, and you have to get the weapons, the spaceships, and all that sort of stuff.
I mean, and at least have Bungie's backing and try to adapt Halo faithfully if you can.
Bungie or 343? Because remember, Bungie gave that rights up to 343.
Yeah, but I mean, they were the original developers of like the first 3, and then there was Reach they did. They could at least have some say in it if they wanted to.
You also got ODST.
Yeah, that too. They didn't do Halo Wars that much, I know. But yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, if Neill Blomkamp does another video game property and he does what he did with Gran Turismo, maybe it'll be good. I don't know. But we'll kind of see where it goes, because like Neill Blomkamp has said following the release of this film that District 10 is on his bucket list, but he doesn't know if it's going to get made or not, which is a District 9 sequel. And people have been asking him about it for years, and it's like, I don't know if I'm going to do it. I don't know if I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, okay, if Neill Blomkamp just adapts another game, I don't know which one, but if he did it well, and he had someone write the script and they did it faithfully, and he applies his photorealistic visuals, maybe it would be really good. I don't know.
Yep.
But we'll see where the road takes it. And then I guess really one more company I should bring up before we completely close this. Would Bethesda adapt their properties into live action films if they wanted to?
That's a tough one.
Like, imagine if we got a Fallout film.
Or Skyrim.
Yeah, but they'd have to adapt the other Elder Scrolls if they wanted to get to Skyrim.
Yeah, Oblivion and whatnot, yep.
Yeah, and I mean, you never know. You never know. But Todd Howard better not overhype any adaptation of that stuff, because we all know how he likes to lie when promoting these games.
Yep.
I mean, oh gosh. But yeah, I mean, let's kind of see where the future of gaming films takes us, you know, because I guarantee you there is a Mario sequel in the works.
And probably some other video game, like, films in the works as well.
Yeah, like the upcoming Five Nights at Freddy's film.
Yep, that could be like a horror, type element to it.
Yeah, with a little bit of scary Chuck E. Cheese nostalgia,
Yeah.
because they used to have the animatronics. I probably will not see that because I did not play any one of those.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Because even if you didn't play it yourself, well, you probably saw gameplays, because of the YouTubers back in the days.
Just thumbnails, not gameplay. I wasn't into that kind of stuff.
Mm.
It's weird. I know. I'm one of those kids that was not into Five Nights at Freddy's, but I mean, I was playing other stuff at the time.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there were other kids that were playing other stuff at the time. You know.
Probably.
It's like we don't have to play what all the other kids are playing. We can do whatever we want.
Well, that was the craze. Remember that Five Nights at Freddy, and then you have like all these YouTubers, like the famous ones. I know Markiplier, Jacksepticeye,
And PewDiePie were doing it.
Yep, they were all doing the Five Nights at Freddy's.
I'm pretty sure Rad Brad did those too, but Rad Brad, I mean, he also did many of the big ones.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I mean, where was I going with that? I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I'd say we had a good time with this, and I would say go check this out.
Yep.
In terms of like what's out right now, I mean, just go check it out. This is actually not that bad of a film.
Solid film.
It was pretty solid. I think, it's not perfect. I mean, it does follow that sports formula, and the characters are not exactly the most interesting, but in terms of its storytelling, I thought it did it.
Yep.
And it delivered in terms of its visuals and action and racing,
Mm-hmm.
It did what it set out to do, and I'm happy that PlayStation has something that's actually really watchable.
Yep.
I mean, what more can we ask for, really?
Yep, that's for sure.
But it's nice that, people were like, there's no story behind this. How do you adapt it? Well, they found a way to do it.
Yep.
And I mean, it was good. I don't know what else I can say. You got any closing statements?
No, nothing else to say.
All right. So yeah, that's Gran Turismo. We hope you go see it and have a good time with it like we did.
Yep.
If you didn't have a good time with it, well, that's on you. But next time, I think we're going to see The Creator, because we've seen so many trailers for that.
When is it supposed to come out again?
The end of September.
Alright.
But I'm really looking forward to it, because this is the return of Gareth Edwards to mainstream filmmaking after Star Wars Rogue One.
Yeah, end of September. Alright.
So it's like, we got another sci-fi film coming up, one that looks really interesting.
Alright.
Oh, and the people we exchanged seats with in the theater, I overheard them saying, "This looks stupid." And I'm like, no, it isn't.
Oh, The Creator? Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, what's so stupid about The Creator? It looks really interesting.
Yeah, because it's just, robotics. I mean, it's another one of those post-apocalyptic type thing. But
It's not really post-apocalyptic. It's more dystopian future, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, a dystopian, because a nuke happened, basically.
Yeah, they dropped the warhead on Los Angeles, and in the trailer we actually saw the crater.
Yeah.
And of course there's buildings standing, stuff got vaporized. Didn't annihilate the world.
No, but it caused it enough damage to where it's like after LA, and it's like, okay, now there's unsettling chaos a little bit.
Yeah, but it'll be kind of interesting to see, because it looks like a really fascinating world, and I just want to know what the story's going to be all about. So we kind of get a little hint of it, but I mean, it might just be the go-to sci-fi film we've been waiting for some time. Who knows? But I do know the Avatar sequels will be another go-to sci-fi thing in the future.
Yeah.
And I did the math. I'm going to be like 35 by the time Avatar 5 comes out in 2031.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's a long wait. Very long wait. I don't know if 6 and 7 will get made, but yeah. But anyway, we got to wrap this up now because this has been kind of a long one. But I will say this. You might enjoy this. You'll have a good time with it. And next time, The Creator. See you around.
See ya.